Indifference to God breeds indifference to everything. What's that noise? It's an aeroplane, Geronda. Close the window. We don't want it coming in. The world has gone so mad, even that could happen. Everything's falling apart. Family, education, public services. People don't care about anything. They are empty. Whose fault is it that we have come to this? I'm speaking in general terms. I just want to show you how indifferent people are. Go to any school and you'll see. For example, if open windows are banging in the wind, it's doubtful that even one child will care enough to shut them so they don't break. Some will gape, some will just sit back and watch them rattle, while others will merely pass by as if nothing is happening. Indifference. An army officer who was in charge of the oil depot used to tell me, I'm having a hard time finding a soldier to place on guard duty at the depot. One who will be responsible enough to keep others from starting a fire or be sure that he himself won't throw a cigarette. There is a half-hearted spirit, no manliness at all. We have completely gone bad. I wonder how God tolerates us. There was so much dignity in the old days. There was Filorimo. During the war in 1940 at the frontier, the Italians would sometimes have an encounter with the Greek guards and would visit their guard post. And to see the Filorimo of the Greeks, once when the Italians went to a Greek guard post, the Greeks offered them some coffee. One of the Greek officers took a handful of money out of his pocket, 50 and 100 drachma notes, and this money was worth something back then. And he set them on fire in order to boil coffee. He wanted to show the Italians that Greece was a rich country. The Italians were impressed. See the spirit of sacrifice. Nowadays we have been permitted by a spirit that one finds in communist countries. In Russia, even though they had an abundant crop this year, there will be great hunger among the people. They did not harvest the grain on time. They went to harvest in the autumn. Is harvesting ever done in autumn? But if the crop is not their own, how can they ache enough for it to go and harvest? Their life is a drudgery. They don't have the drive to go and create something, because for so many years they were not free to create. There it goes, with an idle spirit, with this indifference, the whole country is sinking. Is it raining and the wheat is spread out? They don't care. Is it time to leave work? They leave work. The rain washes the harvested wheat away. The next day they will go to work on time to gather what is left of it. But when the wheat is your own and it's spread out on the threshing floor, if it should rain, would you ever leave it to be lost? No, you lose your sleep in order to save it. And even though you are so very tired, you feel joy, you feel delight. Indifference towards God leads to indifference towards everything else. It leads to disintegration. Faith in God is so very important. When man worships God, then he loves his parents too, and his home, his relatives, his work, his village, his whole region, his state, his fatherland. One who does not love God or his family isn't capable of loving anything. And of course he doesn't love his country either, which after all is but one big family. What I am trying to say is that everything stems from faith in God. When a person does not believe in God, he doesn't care about his family, his village, or his country either. And all of these values are now falling apart. And this is why there is a spirit of idleness and indifference. A police officer wrote to me, I couldn't come because I had a lot of work to do. There's only 2 of us covering an area that is supposed to be covered by 8. You see what's happening. Instead of assigning 2 more policemen, they are leaving only 2. Fortunately, there are exceptions. Once a father came to me and said, pray for my son Angelo because they are going to kill him. I had known his son, who was serving in the military at the time, since childhood. Why, what's wrong? I asked him. He said, he found the others playing cards when they should have been on duty. He reprimanded them, they didn't listen. Then he went to report them and one of them threatened to kill him. Look, I said, they're not going to kill him, so don't worry about that. But I will pray for Angelo so they do not court-martial him for not playing cards with the others. I learned something else and said, Glory be to God, there are still some Greeks who care about their country. An Air Force pilot had attempted to overtake some Turkish airplanes which had violated Greek airspace, to take pictures in order to prove it. The others from the ground radio communications told him, let him go, don't bother, but he insisted and kept trying to overtake them. In the meantime, the Turkish pilot with the bigger aeroplane was flying faster and lowered his altitude, leading the poor Greek pilot to fall into the sea. And there are others who simply fly around in their aeroplane. What a difference. One has to grasp the real meaning, to have a need to do what is good and right. Otherwise, all is idleness and indifference. You can't possibly force someone to go fight in a war. He'll be looking for ways to run rather than fight. But once he understands what harm the enemy can do, then he will volunteer to go.